Hey yo, my Planet Coaster friends! Johnny5 Alive here, and guess what we're doing today? We're building something in Planet Coaster. It's been a hot minute. To give you guys a point of reference of how long it's actually been, Candyland finished, I want to say, in 2019, September. So that would have been just over 2 years ago. And I did a lot of level design on Candyland. I built Fairground Farms, I orchestrated the whole thing, I built Ice Cream Mountain, and I had my hand on a few blueprints on that project, but I mainly sculpted the map and placed things down and made it look pretty. So that was more of a level design project. The last blueprint before that was, I think, 2018. I did a Cosmic Cow milkshaker thingy for a ride skin contest. So in theory, it's been about 3 years since I've actually built something in Planet Coaster in terms of like handcrafting a blueprint. It's been a long time. I didn't realize how long it's actually been. Time flies. And the reason we're building this one here today was Moomin is doing a series, and I'll put a link to it in the description. We're gonna wait to release this video, I think, or time it out so that his episode of me is up on his channel. So if you're watching this now, he should have a video of his pirate series where I'm the feature, I'm the spotlight. So I am getting a spotlight, which is pretty cool. So shout out to Moomin. You guys should definitely go subscribe to him just for the fact that he actually got me to build something in Planet Coaster in 3 years, which is pretty freaking awesome. So shout out to Moomin for that. And go check out his video series on his thingamajig, on his pirate build. So he basically just said I have a 9 by 4.5 grid size space to work with, and that he wanted me to do a Whirly rig. And I don't know why he chose the Whirly rig. I guess if I were to assume, it's because everyone thinks the Whirly rig is my favorite ride because I like the Herpy Derpy song. And speaking of songs, I did a custom soundtrack for this here, which you can listen to if you stay to the very end. And if you go to the workshop link and give this a rating if you enjoy the blueprint, I'd highly appreciate just clicking that rating button. It's a lot harder to get 4 stars in Planet Coaster these days, apparently, which is a bit of a bummer. I used to wake up and see 4-star creations, not anymore. So if you guys could give it a rating and click the link, you can actually download the MP3 for my custom song. All right, so that is pretty much the introduction. What you guys need to know, I'm building this for Moomin. It's a Whirly rig. I was set to a certain amount of size, and I haven't played Planet Coaster in forever. Now, what are we doing here? I have no freaking idea. So I went into this build looking at the size and thinking to myself, well, first of all, I've never built with Caribbean pieces. I've never built a pirate thing in Planet Coaster. So where do I start? Well, I knew I wanted to use the Caribbean pieces, even though they're god-awful and ugly, and I've never used them because of that reason, but it is a pirate build, after all. It's gotta be pirate-themed, and that's Moomin's request. So I said, hey, let's do Caribbean mashed up with Shantytown, make some nice wood, and then try to give this some elevation and undulation. I didn't want to just build the flat ride on the ground. I didn't want it to be a flat ride, but so I wanted to suspend it. And I'm actually surprised this is going at 16 times speed because it was turned out to be an 8.5-hour build for the whole thing start to finish. So I figured we would go at 16 times speed so we can get this done in roughly half an hour, a little bit longer with some B-roll and final presentation. So this first little bit that you've already seen must have been at least over an hour or two of me tinkering with things, looking through the pieces and figuring out what I want to do. And up until this point, and even at this point, I'm thinking this is a disaster. It is a box. It is horrendous. What am I doing? I should give up. But fun little fact, back in the day when I played Planet Coaster, they didn't have the ability to merge multiple blueprints. And what that means is essentially when you place down a grid-based piece, it forces it to become the building. And everything that is not a free-form piece, like a tree or a decoration, anything that's attached to the grid had to be within that group. Meaning you couldn't have two little pieces that were off the grid, and you couldn't really mash pieces together. And that made it a lot more difficult to work with, and that meant you can only have one structure that uses the grid in that blueprint. That's how the game worked back then. So I got good at making boxy buildings that worked within the grid and decorating them to, masterful quality. How do you make a box look good? That's how the game was back then. Now you can mash multiple blueprints together, and that's how you see people making these really cool builds with like angles and stuff like that. So I did use that technique in this to make things a little bit more interesting. But I went into it thinking I'm going to make a boxy build because he did give me a 9x4 grid. And I think I used 9x8 with some overhang. That's why you see all that overhang, because it actually goes outside of the size he gave me, which is going to hang over the pathway in his park. So I was okay with that. I could go a little wider at the top, I figured, and that's why it is wider at the top. So again, going back to what I was saying is, I always knew that if you made a boxy building that didn't look that good, you can save it later with just a plethora of decorations. So I knew even though I wasn't really liking the way things were looking, I would be able to kind of decorate the crap out of it. But I did like how I mishmashed the Caribbean and the shantytown together. Now, what you see me doing here is some basic shape art, and I'm eyeballing it based off of the little swirly water splashes on the flat ride. There's a little splash behind the Whirly Rigg itself, 3 little water splashes, or more than 3. There's a bunch of little water splashes. That was my reference. So I just thought, like, when I'm building this, it's going to be brown and more brown on top of brown. I need to add my own personal spin on things, pun intended, because it's a spinning Whirly Rigg. And I need to add some flair. And that was something I did a lot in my past creations. I had custom cosmic cows and lots of colors for them. I would build a lot of things out of basic shape, and I always freehanded them. I never ever did anything in Planko that was traced. I've always freehanded. And back then, when I did do that stuff, you couldn't import custom images either, so you were forced to freehand it. So I'm doing everything here kind of old school method and introducing some of that new school method where you can combine multiple building pieces together. I utilized that here and realized how glorious it actually is. So yeah, I wanted color pop. I wanted character. I wanted a lot of personality in this build. I couldn't just go pure serious. And when I'm putting this big giant water splash, I thought maybe if I duplicated it 3 times, and it just looked awful. I didn't like the way it was looking, and I was unsure of it to begin with, but I wanted to try it. You don't know until you try it. So I went back to the drawing board here, and I'm thinking, well, what if I make like a medium-sized one and then a small-sized one? Will that help bring it together? I don't know. Well, we'll have to try. And again, I wasn't going for perfection on these spirals. Like, I think you can do a lot better water splashes. But, sometimes working messy can still give pretty good results. You're really going for that composition. You don't have to go for perfection. And I was trying to do this build in 4 hours, which I ended up doubling that. And I suspected that would happen. I was kind of prepared for the long haul. At the same time, wanted to do something good in a reasonable amount of time that kind of welcomed me back to Planet Coaster, and at the same time showcased that I could hopefully still build. And but I wanted to do something kind of quick. So that's why I'm just kind of throwing these together and seeing how they look And when I got the smaller one in with the medium one and did some adjusting, I was actually really quite pleased how that looked. A big blue splash, it's going to draw a lot of color to the composition. And I wasn't done there. Like, I needed more color, and I like to represent characters. I did the Cosmic Cow for my Cosmic Cow builds. I did Missy Goods. I did Gulpy. I've done a whole bunch of miniatures every time I do a certain themed, Planet Coaster themed creation. I kind of feel like it's important to sculpt a basic shape mascot or statue of the creation that you're going for. So I thought, how fun would it be to design the actual Whirly Rigg squid? Now, here I'm playing around with it, trying to get the eyes right, and as you'll see in a little bit here, I felt that the eyes were too small. And where the small eyes actually fit the look of the actual model, and scaling it up, like the one step bigger, is these big guys right here. That's a big step. There's no kind of in between. The basic shapes jump in sizes, which always makes it more difficult to build with them, because they definitely could have a few in between. The reason I decided to go with the big eyes is because anything cartoony, if you exaggerate or accentuate certain characteristics of the character, you'll get a more lifelike, funny creation. So the big eyes just make it more fun, in my opinion. It makes it stand out. In fact, the little eyes were so small that you would barely notice it, and it just looked too much like the original. So the big eyes make it goofy, make it silly, add a lot of personality. And you saw me playing around with those spheres. There was an issue, you may not have seen it because it's going so fast, but when you zoomed out, they just turned into one big blob, and when you zoomed in, they were almost hard to see. So I had to go with bigger, different spheres, longer spheres, the kind of cone-shaped ones. And here I'm putting these little Skittles, M&Ms all over his body, because the original Whirly Rigg on the ride skin itself has little purple dots. So we had to get the purple polka dots in there. And now, originally, so the reason I put the cylinder here was I wanted to try to simplify the barrel. There's a squid and a barrel. A squid and a barrel, not in a barrel. And I thought it would be cool to have both the barrel and the squid. And I was going to actually model the barrel and make it kind of broken and fat. I still think that would be the better way to go. But I think having him on top of a cylinder still kind of represents the barrel itself. So that was good enough. And building a big barrel like that might just be too much custom stuff and make it too cartoony, and it just take a lot more time. And the time aspect is where I decided against it. And I said, hey, it's a big cylinder of the castle. It works with the castle. And we wouldn't have a cylindrical part of the castle if I did the barrel. So I think it was fine. That's the decision I went with. So here you saw me cover up the back because I still want it to look good from the back, not just a big mess. And there's going to be more that we do there. And I'm filling in the floors, putting in different pieces. But yeah, we got the squid on top. We kind of custom posed him. I had some ideas for what I wanted to do with him. I kind of wanted him to look through a telescope or just do something. And I wanted to kind of have him doing something. And we'll figure that out later. I've just left that for future Johnny and decided to continue on. What I'm doing now is basically looking through all piratey stuff. Like I've said in the past, I never ever built with pirate in this game. So I didn't really know what was accessible. And one of Moomin's rules was to use the main game filter. So I couldn't use any DLC. And I do make a mistake later with the DLC, but it's a fixable one, very minor. We'll talk about it when we get there. But the main filter is on, so I'm working with basically vanilla Planet Coaster. That was the rule. And first time using pirate. Now, these little pieces that I'm playing around with here are technically Western. And I knew that while I was working with them, but I thought I could make it work. And I wanted to add a little bit of noise and undulation to the rooftops and make them somewhat interesting. And the speed build went so fast you can't even, like, while I was giving the intro, you saw me working the path. I got the path in very, very, very early because I knew it would be a disaster trying to get a path down after building everything. So my entire build is actually constructed around the path work, and getting that down very early on allowed me to just work around it and see what kind of building shapes will work here and there. And then I don't have like this fussy interior / pathwork thing to figure out later. So it's because it's all constructed around the pathwork, it makes everything very seamless for me. And I'll have to do a pathing guide or setup thing later, which probably just be some screenshots or something. So that little bit of orange that I'm putting behind the trim there, I just wanted more color pop. We have the big squid at the top right of the big cylinder. We need something to balance it out on the bottom left. And I did play around with some colors, some purple, some blue, some orange, and I did decide that the orange worked best. So I wanted a little bit of color pop on that side. Like I said, I'm going for something with a lot of personality and, character. That has always been how I built in this game. It's been just the way I do things. So I wanted that charm to come across, but at the same time, take this build somewhat seriously. I needed it to look and feel like a pirate build that wasn't some just crazy, zany, silly, whirly Rigg thing that looks very out of place and, like an eyesore in the back of Moomin's Park. And he showed me the plot. I'm at the very back left of the park, and that's why the big splash thing works, because whatever is facing like the outside of it, the back side of the big splash, that is the outside of the park. So unless you're looking at the park from the outside, you will never really see the back side of my creation, and I had that in mind while I was building this. That was an important aspect to this build, knowing that I was in the back corner. And I did see some path work and stuff, and it was pretty fat in front of the building here, which meant I could do the overhang as well. So it's been a while since I played Planet Coaster, and back then, as I mentioned earlier, you couldn't do the multiple building kind of mashup. And this was a great opportunity for me to play around with multiple levels, and that's where we filled in the floor bits, where we did lots of different building only pieces like you see here. I can slide them together and not have this problem where they're jutting out or hanging over, because I can make them individual buildings now. And I found like this was actually glorious to build in Planet Coaster, and it's no wonder I got frustrated so long ago and just stopped building, because I felt like I was limited. And even though there was updates that I was well aware of, I just decided to not come back and try them. And you get stuck in your old ways, and trying these new tools that come with the game, separating, combining, all that stuff, keeping things into multiple groups. I played around with that on multiple levels in this build, and I found like it was very organized and very fun to build with. But then there's a lot of freeform stuff that I'm just placing down, like you can see me doing the trim. That is not a part of a group. I didn't bother grouping it. It's just kind of like stuck on top. Some things that you place on top of other buildings, it'll automatically be merged into the group that it's touching. And if that happened, I just let it happen. And I didn't really care too much about it. I was just going at things where I needed to see more detail. And one of the things that we have come to see over the years when we visit these parks and we look at these shop contests, the creators these days are really good at building tons and tons of trim. I tune into Wix's stream once in a while. Shout out to Wix. Go follow him. Twitch.tv/Wixy. And every time I go to his stream, I just see him sliding trim, duplicate, slide, duplicate, slide, duplicate, slide. That is a lot of what the best builders in the community do. They just grab a piece, duplicate, slide, and they don't let anything be default or undecorated. So you can't just put a wall up and call it a day. You got to put bottom trim, you got to put top trim, you got to put support trim, you got to put more trim, layers upon layers of trim. And, you know, trim can't just be one thing. It has to be 6 or 7 different things. I wasn't happy with the walls here. I did post a screenshot. Shout out to Farana as well. She says, hey, Johnny, all your wood is the same color. And I was like, I know, but I couldn't really find any other pieces. These were the darkest types of trim. And then I decided to have another look through, and we found the darker walls. And they were upward panels instead of sideways panels, which also created more noise, which I liked. And then I did find some darker boards. So we put the dark boards on top of the light walls, and we put the light panels on top of the dark walls, or we kind of deleted the light walls and put in darker walls. And as you can see, this little reshape preset, it's looking pretty nice. There's a lot of light wood, dark wood, and just different tones of brown. I wasn't happy with the back of the build, even though it's basically out of sight, out of mind. I still wanted it to have some level of realism in terms of, you know, this looks like it makes sense. And here I'm just trying to cover up these little art bits that were sticking out the back. So I just wanted to add a little bit of scaffold and different things to that and make it clean. And as we're looking at this, I'm jumping around a lot. Like, I'll do a little bit of trim, and then I'll run around and do a little bit of fence work, and then I'll do a little bit of windows. I don't really have, because I haven't played in so long, I didn't have like a sense of layering. Obviously, we started from the base, and we blocked it out, and I think I did a good job at blocking it out. Where do I want my ride? Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, we need something to draw the eye. Let's do some basic art shape. Let's get that in. And that was like layering. We started with a gray block. We added some big captivating focal points. And then we just start layering further. And that layering should, in theory, like I'm doing more blocking here. I should have blocked that out a lot sooner. It didn't really matter, because I figured I'll get to it when I get to it, and it's not going to affect anything. But having all the blocking done would have allowed me to say, okay, we're done this stage. Let's move on to the next stage. Because it was the interior, I didn't really care. I wanted to make sure that the exterior was the part that was blocked out the most. And I've just figured I'll figure that out later. But for future me, and for anybody watching this that needs some pointers, I do think it's much better to work in structured layers. Get everything blocked out. Get all of that trim in. All of the trim everywhere. Start putting those windows on, those door pieces on. All the big layer, what we call broad brush strokes. Everything that makes a big impactful change that's somewhat big, like we see with the scaffolding here. Try to get all those big pieces in first, and then move on to the medium pieces, and then the small pieces to touch everything up, and then as well as your lighting in one big layer. And try to get organized in your layers. So here we're moving on somewhat, I'd say, layers. I'm putting the scaffold in the back. I'm trying to see what kind of big props I can get in. I thought this was really adorable. I wanted to put like a little ship on the top of the wave, like he's being picked up by the sea. Just something to add another focal point to the very top of the wave, and also add a little bit more of that personality in. The trellises that you saw me put on top of the building that I'm messing with there, putting some hooks on, I had an idea for that, and the reason those are there is to balance out the composition. We have this big guy on the right with a big tower, a big splash in the middle. The left side is very small, and it's kind of like a big slope in that sense. So I needed something high up to elevate that, and I had an idea. The reason that they're there is because they're there to support garden work. And I figured later on, when I'm doing another layer of detailing, we'll do a lot of greenery. I needed more color pops. Right now, everything is brown. We got a little bit of orange and blue. We need some more color. And that's where the seaweed came in. And because there's a big splash on top, and in concept, there's a lot of water on the castle. There's big splashes, the Whirly Rig spinning, there's water on the Whirly Rig, there's a big squid. It makes sense to have the seaweed on the castle because the castle is actually somewhat submerged in water, in theory. So I wanted to have some fun with this seaweed. I put some seaweed on the hand of the squid itself so that it looks like he's kind of whirling the seaweed around because he is the Whirly Rig after all, and just making a mess of everything. and that added a lot more of that green to the castle side, and also allowed us to decorate that really bland, boring castle stuff that is on the right side so heavily, and it breaks up the monotonous of it and the boringness. So I was really happy that the seaweed was able to be used in such a fun way there, and it really lended aid to the boring castle, and I'm happy with that. Now, I didn't do any seaweed on the left side because I wanted it to be this yin and yang. We have this, crazy castle. We have this shanty stuff. Let's leave the shanty out of the the mess. Plus the squid itself is located on the castle half, so it made sense to do it that way. And I wanted the shanty side to be very floral and piratey. So we wanted to do a mashup of this piratey shanty things with the boards and the crazy amounts of trim, and that's where it was going to draw most of its detailing from, whereas the castle is left mostly plain. You can't really decorate that brick without it not making sense. So I wanted to just start adding some ropes and stuff here, and I was like, why are there ropes here? This doesn't really make sense. I'm like, because ropes are cool and it's pirate. And I was like, well, why don't I hang some lanterns off of them, and that'll make sense now that they were strung up in the purpose of hanging lanterns from. And it did give me an opportunity to get more lighting into the creation without having to put the same lamp post everywhere. And now I could use a variety of lamps. And you guys know me, I always check out night lighting, critique nighttime lighting. So this had to be good at night, coming from me. And and it gave me an opportunity to have some fun with that nighttime lighting, because in my opinion, lighting is fun. And here we go, I'm having a lot of fun here. And I thought for the Whirly rig itself, we're going to go with a purple for those little purple polka dots, and the purple will draw your eye to the middle that's on the blue. The spotlights that I put on the blue waves are right in the center of the waves, so you get these 3 little circles that light up. I wanted to get a little candle on top of the boat. We ended up going with a lantern, just give a nice little highlight, and then we went with an orange spotlight on the actual squid himself. Now we got some nice purple and blue in the center, giving a cool composition in the center to draw your eye to, and some warm stuff all around it with the squid, the lantern on the boat, and then the rest of the actual building using those warm yellows and oranges, and having all the cool colors in the direct center where our focal point is. And that's how I approach my lighting. Now you can see this little pad that we had on the side that was really awkward. I can now fill it with dirt and do my garden work. And I knew I wanted to do something with the gardens. I didn't really picture having trees there. In fact, I wanted to have nets and ropes and all sorts of things, but I couldn't figure out how to make that work. So I said, hey, let's just put a tree in and see how it looks. And it turned out looking awesome. So sometimes you just got to try things and see how it goes. And when I did that, I loved the trees because it added that little bit of green pop, and the other side already had the green pops from the seaweed. And so we can have our lush side and then our swampy side, and that helps lend aid to that really cool yin and yang factor of the lush, lived in, piratey stuff, and then like the grungy castle crap, with the squid on top. And I really wanted this to be beautiful on one side, kind of ugly on the other. And, it's just the idea of the kegs, the man-made kegs with the beer in it, the festive fun stuff, and then the slimy squid. That is the theme of the Whirly rig. So here I'm going, I really love the roses. I used to have rose bushes in my mom's garden at my mom's house. Roses were her favorite thing. And, every year she would grow roses. So just as a memory to my mother, I wanted to put these roses everywhere. Plus they give that hit of red, which is very similar to the orange that we've been scattering throughout the build already. Now we have those hits of orange and red and green and blue, and it's really coming together. It's very vibrant. So we have all these vines everywhere, roses, little pirate knickknacks, and this is like kind of my final layering of detailing. And I really just try to keep jamming more stuff in there, keep jamming more stuff. What can we do to make the interior look nice, which is technically the queue. Mostly all of our interior is the queue, other than the shop that I add in. And so I'm just trying to see what kind of pirate props are around. I've never decorated with pirate props. Now we're doing the interior. And I went into the interior and took some notes from what I did on the outside, which, what I said earlier, do everything in layers. you're going to end up having to redo things later. Like I did delete those walls at one point to switch them out with different wood walls. You'll notice that when you're doing things, you learn from it and you go, oh, what I learned here, I can apply somewhere else. So we're applying what we learned on the outside to the inside. And if I had roughed everything out on the inside, I would have been ripping things down. But I ended up ripping things down anyways. So it didn't really matter. We would have ended up doing it twice no matter what, because I discovered I think I like a mixture of the wood and brick. So we are in a castle. We have a castle roof. We have castle main walls, exterior walls, and then why not have the wooden interior walls? And then we can, you know, cover them up with nice wooden trim. So we have two shops in here. It was sushi and noodles. It felt very fitting to the squid theme. We get the noodles with our squid sushi. What I didn't realize while I was doing this is those are DLC. When you turn on the main game filter, you have to re-turn it on for both scenery, buildings, and shops and facilities. I had it turned on for scenery and building, but I forgot to turn it on for shops and facilities. It didn't even cross my mind that the sushi would have been World's Fair DLC. Don't know why I overlooked that, but when Moomin puts it into his park, he's just going to swap the shops out for like chief beef or something. They're still going to sell noodles and sushi. It's just going to be a different, you know, item that the people are grabbing for his park only. For this, if you download it, the sushi's fine, as so long as you have the World's Fair DLC. If it really bothers anyone, I can do an updated version that just has chief beef for people that don't own DLC. But 5 years in a Planet Coaster, I would imagine everybody has DLC by now, if they're serious about playing the game. And you probably are serious about playing the game if you've been playing it for 5 years. So we're just doing final interior decorations for our queue, just double checking everything, and you know, just finalizing the interior and all that. And boy, oh boy, this recording went really fast. 16 times speed is insanely fast. I would have liked to slow it down. Here's a look at the screenshots here. But I didn't want to talk for an hour, and I didn't want to do multiple episodes for one build. I just wanted to get this out to you guys to see what you think. And it was also done for Moomin, so give it up for Moomin Little Socks. Go subscribe to his channel once again, and go watch the episode where he spotlights me. I'll have a link to that in the description, as well as in a pinned comment or something. Go watch Moomin Little Socks Spotlight Channel 5 Gaming. That'll be kind of an interesting flip on things. I want to know what you guys think of Moomin's content, and I think he's an awesome creator. So if there's anyone that's going to get me building in Planet Coaster again, it's got to be Moomin Little Socks. So shout out to him for getting me into the game again. And I hope you guys enjoyed my build. If you do, let me know what you thought of it. If you like the speed of things, the process, me just explaining everything. If you like this type of speed build, if you learned something from this, or you want to see more of me, just fire everything down below, because if I get enough reactions out of this, maybe I'll do another one. And I felt it started off pretty slow. I wasn't too into the process at first. At not played the game for 3 years, I felt very slow and clunky. But like I said, you can make anything look good in Planet Coaster as long as you keep layering. And I wasn't too happy with my shape, but as you can see here, the shape turned out to be quite nice because of all the layering. And I knew that going into it, so I figured whatever I make should turn out decent. But I was actually quite surprised. I surprised myself, because this, to me, is probably one of my more detailed builds to date. And it's almost like I learned something while not playing Planet Coaster, which, you know, you continuously learn and take notes. And every person that I've ever looked at their creations over the years, I've obviously embedded some mental notes somewhere. Anyways, this is pretty much the end of the video. That is a tour of the queue and the ride. I'm going to leave you guys with a special little ending of watching the Whirly rig with the custom song that I made. So I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, share it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.
There once was a rig that put to sea. Name of the ride was the Whirly Man Rigg. The winds blew up, her barrel dipped down. Oh, blow my whirly boys, blow. Hot! Soon may the Whirly Rig come to bring us barrels of squid and fun. One day when the tenty-foos are done, we'll take our leave and go. Hot! She'd up in 2 weeks from Bore when on came a guest down to the shore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that ticket and go. Hot! Soon may the Whirly Rig come to bring us barrels of squid and fun. One day when the tenty-foos are done, we'll take our leave and go. Hot!